Welcome to an Australian Living Labs Innovation Network presentation. The network aims to promote Living Labs in Australia, develop the practitioner base and foster collaboration opportunities with existing Living Labs in Europe and the Asia Pacific. You can find us more about us on the website shown, and we're also holding our second symposium on the 5th of June, co-hosted with QUT. And you can find us on Eventbrite, and both those links we'll put in this comments section below. We'd like to say a particular big thank you to Community Resourcing, who are helping us with technical support for today and for much of our other series. They have a follow-up conference on the 6th of June, Community Care Business Transformation Innovation Conference, and they've got a terrific lineup, so I highly recommend you check those guys out. And again, we'll put the links in the website below. Today we were talking with Associate Professor Michael Dezuanni. Michael undertakes research about digital media literacies and learning in home and school community contexts. He's the Associate Director of QUT's Digital Media Research Centre and teaches in film, television, animation discipline within QUT's Creative Industries faculty. He has two research projects, and the one we'll be talking about today is fostering digital participation through Living Labs in regional and rural Australian communities. Michael is very accomplished and has won many awards. The one that makes him coolest in my household is being invited to the Minecraft Education Summit and providing the education team with advice on the use of digital game in education. Michael is also a tremendous supporter of the network and is helping us set up the second symposium on the 5th. In this presentation, we had a small issue where it didn't record the webcam, so unfortunately can't see Michael give the answers to the questions, but you can hear what he has to say, and I hope you can find that as informative as I did, and we hope you enjoy the presentation. Thank you.
In terms of other stakeholders, you sort of mentioned, community groups, and were there things like councils or other businesses involved or anything like that for some of the projects?
Yeah. So this was an ARC linkage project, and so I guess the key stakeholders involved, in a sense, were our partners. So we had the State Library of Queensland was our major partner, and so the State Library has a specific digital literacy initiative that it runs and that it wanted to promote through this project. And so one of our sites of recruitment then naturally became local community libraries and so on. The Toowoomba Regional Library Service was one of our partners. Townsville City Libraries was another partner, and then the Empire Theatre in Toowoomba was also a partner. So they were key stakeholders, but one of the things we very much identified in this project was that it's very necessary to kind of map the local ecology of stakeholders who can bring capacity to the Living Lab. So one of the things that we very much promote now is the idea that if you go into a community, one of the first things you should do is kind of take stock of what's available in the community. When we went to Pittsworth, for instance, we recruited through the library, but the people we met were involved with their local art society, the Family and History Society. There was a fellow there involved with community radio. He was doing community radio in quite traditional sorts of ways, really, but very much wanted to know how to bring a digital component to that. There was a local part-time journalist who worked on the local paper who became involved. So in a sense, the kind of public and community organisations were pulled into it in a particular kind of way. We could just as easily, if it had gone a different way, we might have been working with sporting organisations or other kinds of cultural organisations. So I think for us in our project, bringing those stakeholder groups and organisations into the mix of how you solve this issue of digital participation was really crucial.
It sounds sort of quite organic in the way you're describing it.
Yeah.
Starting off with that initial set of stakeholders, and then as you meet people, you sort of who's in the community, and you're attracting them into the project. Is that
Exactly right. Exactly right. So, yeah, it has been organic and purposefully so. We've never wanted to go to a community to tell them what they need, what they need, for instance. And also, it has to be organic, I think, because, it's just a reality that there are often local politics, for instance, certain organisations who have a history with each other who simply don't want to work with each other for various reasons, or who just, you might have one organisation that works primarily with young people and another that works with older people, and they simply don't necessarily see how they could work together. That's not to say that they might not usefully work together, but it's difficult to force people to work together if they don't want to. So for this kind of work, I think for this particular project, it was absolutely necessary to keep it very organic.
So I'm interested to understand how you might explain that to some of the stakeholders, in the sense of this kind of organic or emergent type of property. When you're dealing with something like a linkage grant, where there tends to be fairly defined outputs, how did you manage that sort of tension?
Well, so I think from the outset we did write into the methodology for the linkage grant that this was going to be emergent and organic. I mean, I think we did use the word organic in the actual application, but that's just to say that I think our partners, so the State Library, for instance, was very open to this idea that they're an organisation that already has a long history of working with librarians in local contexts, and very much was open to the idea that things were going to have to work differently in different community contexts. So I think that was absolutely fine. If I was to speak to this, from a kind of broader sort of policy perspective, I think there is often, within, say, federal government policy or state government policy, around something like digital inclusion or digital literacy, there is very much a kind of top-down approach where if you roll out a program, let's say, digital skills for senior citizens or something, that's seen to be the efficient way to kind of meet people's digital participation needs. But, most of the research I've done around this, most of the reading I've done around this suggests that those kinds of schemes have limited value and often limited success. We were told time and time again by our participants that they had gone off to computer classes and then had forgotten everything that they'd learnt because they had no reason to keep practicing their skills, for instance. So I think that, yes, sometimes in the current kind of research climate, there's a thrust towards kind of certainty and impact and outcomes and measurable, quantifiable, benchmarks, etc. But community work is often simply just much messier than that and much less predictable. And I think you do have to measure success in different kinds of ways.
So I think that probably leads to a nice question next. So what were the successes of the project, and how did how have you measured them?
Yeah, well, the successes for the project have been that some really fantastic things have occurred. People have experienced digital technologies in ways that they previously had not. And for us, a key measure of success was whether that form of digital participation was sustainable, and for instance, once we stepped back, whether the activity would continue. And I would say out of our 6 living labs, that's been the case certainly for at least 4 of them. It may be that the other 2, I could probably say that they probably need another round of intervention to kind of get them going again. But so in the case of Pittsworth, for instance, we had our core group of stories project, which was very much simply about getting these participants or the community used to using digital materials like digital photographs, digital audio recordings, etc., to kind of tell local stories. But then a key group of people from that initial Living Lab experience moved things forward themselves and asked if they could develop skills around website development and so on. And we brought a little bit of, we brought some resources to that, but actually the success of that and the ongoing success of it is simply that some of those key members have taken the initiative and are now just doing that for themselves. And I think that would not have happened if we hadn't initially, gone into the community and worked there. I think the same would be very true to say for the Mix House project, that in fact, the Mix House project is an ongoing project. We've stepped back from it. It's got momentum there in the Townsville community. The Townsville City Library has taken ownership of that project and is very keen to see it continue, for instance. So I think that's one way to measure success or impact, is to see that ongoing participation. The other way we measure impact is that that once we've had this Living Lab experience in a community, that we see other people being drawn into the experience, or new instances of this occur, or it goes off in new directions, for instance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as an example of a new direction?
Yeah, so with our story yelling project, for instance, in Toowoomba, that was a group of young people who kind of formed an editorial team ultimately to build the story yelling website, and they gathered stories from the Toowoomba community and put those together and packaged them up quite nicely. But now some of the key members of that group have developed a new project, which is no longer story yelling, but you can see, how it's just really drawing on their experience in story yelling to enable them to do something new. And those young participants very much talk about story yelling as giving them the confidence to try out new things, to be more entrepreneurial, etc. And they're exactly the kinds of things we hoped would happen.
Yes. So you built the digital literacy and they've been able to apply it to a different thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it has, there have certainly been other instances where things just haven't panned out as we thought they might, or where things simply lose momentum and just don't, they come to an end, and that's kind of it. And in a sense, that's sort of okay too. I mean, the participants in that Living Lab experience would have developed new skills and new knowledges, and they may be using those skills in ways that we're not tracking, perhaps in their own daily lives, but the kind of community level activity has just come to an end, and it's kind of okay, I think.
Yeah, and yes, I can see that there's a mix between the people who can use it in their own homes, or and have that improved literacy, versus the addition of a community forming as well. So
yes.
That both will be true. So lovely. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just wondering whether there's been any impact on the surrounding communities, or any sort of requests for similar projects or help from the communities surrounding these kind of seed ones.
Well, I mean, I think the key kind of impact has been okay. So there's sort of two ways to answer this. The first is yes, certainly. Based on the activity in the communities, we have been approached by other members of the community to ask if they could get involved, or what we might be able to do with them next, I suppose. So that's certainly been true. I mean, and that's come from both members of the community, but also people involved with the local council, people who are who are a part of those local cultural organisations and institutions who would like to see similar or like activities continued. But it's also come from our key partner, the State Library of Queensland. One of the things that we developed out of the project has been a toolkit, which is kind of 10 steps to developing your own living lab at the community level. And it kind of aims to step you through a process so that rather than it simply being a research team who might come in and do something like this, it could very much be the local library staff, for instance, who could run a similar kind of project or program with members of their community. So we're in ongoing discussions with the State Library of Queensland around how we can do professional development for library staff across Queensland around our toolkit, for instance, and I think there will certainly be some impact in that way.
Wonderful. So is there somewhere people can access this toolkit or see more about it?
Yeah. So our Fostering Digital Participation.net website, it's just simply that, fosteringdigitalparticipation.net. You can go to that website and you can download the toolkit from there. There's also outlines of each of the 6 key living labs that were developed with a kind of brief overview of them. In some cases there's video that accompanies that and so on as well.
Fantastic. Okay. So any lessons you'd like to pass on to other practitioners?
I think the key lesson is probably that no matter how involved you